This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Welcome to Horse First with Lockie Phillips, a podcast about paying closer attention to the horse, to the work that we do with horses, and paying attention to what's actually happening in front of us. Not what looks good, not what we've been told looks good, because sometimes we slow down and sometimes we speed up, but we don't pretend. I'm Lockie Phillips. Let's begin. For today's episode, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm in the process of writing a book, my first book under contract with a publisher that is taking a chance on me and my work and is willing to publish a book about my work with horses. And it's a big job to write a book, and I'm nowhere near finished. However, what I thought I might do today is read a passage from what I've created so far, a chapter, if you will, of what I've created so far. And I'd like to read you this chapter and make sure it's important we all know. This chapter is raw. It's not edited. It hasn't been looked over by a team. I've gone through 2 or 3 cursory edits of it so far. And before it is ready for its final version, for publication, it may go through several more iterations. It might even not be in the book in the end. However, this is an important story because I'd like to share it now rather than later, in case it reaches ears that need to hear it. It's learning through story and through experience rather than theory. And I find experience is the best form of research. So, settle in. It's going to be a little longer, but if you're driving somewhere or mucking out or going for a walk somewhere, I hope that this accompanies you well. All right, here goes. Please remember, it's raw and it's unedited. I was watching a demonstration at a stable near a beautiful old forest. This was a stable I visited several times per month for about 2 years, as one of the horses who lived there was an old friend of mine, a schoolmaster that was one of my most important teachers. I would visit him and take him out in the forest to stretch his legs. A well-respected local trainer was giving demonstrations there that day, and at the recommendation of a friend of mine who was an equine osteopath and physiotherapist, I decided to attend. Tisk, 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 the trainer said, their face bright and expression relaxed. They were demonstrating how to move forward, how to teach a horse to move forward, a young horse who lived in the herd that my old friend also lived in. You just quickly do a light, quick tisk, tisk, tisk with the whip on top of the hips, done quickly before they even know what is happening. This teaches them to go forward. It doesn't hurt them. Without forwards, we cannot train the horse. They raise the whip into the air, gesturing to the horse's pelvis. At the same time, their other hand held the draped end of the lead line. With the whip poised in the air above the horse, the trainer asked quietly for the horse to go forward, the whip poised. It looked like a conductor holding their baton aloft, ready to bring the orchestra to play. The horse glanced at the whip, the trainer's well-practiced position, and glanced at their hand on the rope. This horse was young. I noticed the horse begin to try to understand what the trainer was doing, what they were asking for. The horse continued to look at the whole integrated picture, the arena they were in, the group of bystanders watching, the trainer's position in the space relative to their body, the rope, the sensation of the halter on their head, the feel of the air around their body, the presence of their herd in the middle distance. I turned my head and glanced toward my old friend in his herd. He was sharing a large round bale surrounded by herdmates. Looking back again to the training, to the demonstration, I noticed the horse noticing everything. The whip, so far, was one element out of dozens the horse was paying attention to, but I perceived the horse was mostly paying attention to the trainer. Logical, because the trainer was the closest living being relative to them and was moving, making sound, and looking at the horse in a focused manner. The horse was beginning to figure out that the person was using their body to ask something of them. These observations I made lasted about 4 seconds as the trainer, hand and whip again poised above the young horse's hip, waited for the horse to answer the request they had given them. Then, tisk tisk tisk, the whip now moved, wrapped lightly and quickly against the horse's skin above their hip 3 times in quick succession. Not a whipping per se, depending what you define as a whipping. I'm certain the whip tip couldn't have crushed a fly, yet horses are famously sensitive in their skin and can feel a mosquito bite in a windstorm, if a mosquito can even land in a windstorm. But this sudden, benign stinging 3 times in rapid succession surprised the horse, who did not expect it. I noticed the horse's eyes briefly go white around the edges, a whale eye, a microsecond only. Then their head reflexively jolted upwards, not a lot, just an inch or two, gathering their body to quickly move forwards away from the sensation that had surprised their hip. A couple of stiff steps forward away from the tisk tisk tisk, and they glanced to the trainer's body, as if to wonder where that feeling had come from. The trainer oohed and ahed over the horse now, generously stroking their neck, praising them. The horse's face tight, but gently and hopefully glancing towards the trainer reflexively, once, twice, 3 times, correlating the sudden unanticipated stings with the now soft, praising strokes. Lavished with attention, the horse licked and chewed, squared up on their feet, and became still. The trainer stepped back, raised the whip to the same consistent place above the hip, poised and still, and with their lead rope hand, gestured to the horse to go forward off the halter contact again. The same thing repeated. The horse glanced at their entire environment, which takes a moment to do so. Expansive brains take in huge volumes of data quickly, but horses don't have schedules. So the young horse began to take in the entire environment, understanding enough about people that the trainer was asking them to do something while taking the trainer into context with their entire worldview. After about 3 to 4 seconds, the whip quickly and lightly wrapped the horse's hip again, which caused the horse to suddenly come forward, and they were praised. The horse licked and chewed and glanced toward the whip in the trainer's hand this time. Once again, the trainer stepped back, raised the hand to the same position, and asked the same way for the horse to answer their question about forwards. This time, the horse was learning quickly what to do. The young horse did not look at the trainer's position. They did not look at their expression, their sound, their lead rope hand, or any other indicator. The horse was not looking at the space they were in, or their herd mates in the middle distance, where my old friend slowly chewed clean, abundant hay. The young horse's eye tracked the whip from its passive position laid toward the ground to its held position above the hip. Remembering what they had just experienced, the horse made a brave guess and stepped forwards a little stiff. No touch of the whip occurred this time. Lavish praise upon the young horse once again. The other horse people watching, sitting to my left and my right, sighed in wonder. No matter how many times I watch it, seeing horses learn in real time is always a miracle to me, always a privilege to observe. No matter what is motivating the learning, Watching learning is always something I am fascinated by. This local trainer began to speak fluently, with authority, about the value of clarity, especially to young horses, which then segued smoothly into the principles of safe boundaries. That going forwards lightly, immediately, and easily is an essential safety skill for a horse person and a rider. About how leaving the horse in a state of guessing and confusion, in their view, was cruel. The whip, the stick, was simply an extension of their arm. The stick was made from a willow tree, and as a soft, natural wood, it was impossible to hurt the horse with it. That the stick allowed her, as a trainer, to keep her body language quiet, elegant, and minimal, and create lightness in the horse by her own example. As she spoke on this, she repeated this walk transition several more times. Each time the young horse responded, the walk was immediate and brisk, with a small amount of tension and concern, but soon the young horse's head jolt began to disappear, and soon the horse was quietly and softly taking 2 to 3 nice steps forward without the stick ever touching them. Yet I noticed something in the horse's eye, and whilst I listened to the trainer, I was inwardly grappling with the disconnect between what I saw in the horse's eye and the fluent platitudes the trainer was describing. Now, she said, I asked the horse to continue the walk because the walk transition is already very good. So, the trainer positioned again. No sooner had the stick poised itself in a promising manner above the hip than the horse dutifully took 2 steps forward and then gently turned their head towards the trainer, a bit for regard, and waited for the praise they had become accustomed to. This time, the trainer, smiling softly, with a bright voice, repeated their request for walk. Walk, they said. Their body was still in the same position as the initial aid, hand on the soft end of a lead rope, whip poised above the hip, body correctly angled in the direction of travel. The horse was not looking at the hand, body, or listening to the voice cue. The horse was watching the whip, and only the whip. I noticed the horse take their focus to what the whip was doing. I leaned forward, and I narrowed my eyes, and I commanded my brain to pay close attention to the details present in this demonstration. I was looking for ease in the horse, not in their behavior, but in their expression. Peace. I was hunting for peace in all things, especially during learning, as much as possible. I observed what happened next like a sighthound who spotted a rabbit on a hillside. Fixed, narrow, my whole world became that moment. I let my eyes take in every single detail without obstruction or prejudice. Facts I tried to observe, tried to notice facts. The horse, watching the whip, noticed the whip hadn't moved. The horse had taken 2 or 3 steps forward, just as they had been instructed to take over the last 15 minutes repetitively. The horse was waiting for the praise they had come to expect and feel comforted by. The trainer, smiling and relaxed, held her shape. This hesitation is normal, but the horse absolutely must learn to respond nicely and lightly to my requests for clarity and for safe boundaries for the future. The whip then came down onto the rump once. It did not strike, neither did it tap. It made enough contact with enough pressure that the tip of the whip bent halfway down the length of the whip and then bounced off again. Perhaps a fly may have been a casualty in that contact. The horse jumped forward. This horse is inexperienced and undertrained, she said. My intention with the whip is only to support the horse in giving clarity. Their body is so much bigger than ours, and I need to make my body bigger so that the horse can understand me. In this instance, the horse was simply confused, and instead of struggling and suffering to try and figure out my body language, the whip gives the opportunity to the horse to understand me immediately and for me to keep my body language quiet. Now the expectations and boundaries are clear. My intentions communicated through this whip is to offer clear, kind leadership. The horse walked a little stiffly around on the long and tighter end of the lead rope, now further away from the trainer, for 3/4 of a circle, looking now to their herdmates again, where my old friend sighed over another mouthful of clean hay. The youngster exhaled through a nose loud enough for me to hear from a little distance away. Eyes a little wide and a little tight, but nothing extreme. No dust was flying, just a little bit of a tense moment. No worse than a horse walking past a gate they dislike or a drain pipe they didn't anticipate coming upon, where the horse was physically contained, but mentally just the tiniest touch wound up. The horse people to my left and to my right, about 12 in all, quietly observed. Everyone was relaxed and breathing rather deeply. They were watching something they had seen done before, or they had seen something similar done much worse. And what they were watching now was either absolutely normal or much, much better than the normal they were used to. I too had seen horses taught forwards in a much less elegant and much more explosive ways than this. The horse coming to the end of their 3/4 of a circle walk was now the only horse in the arena. They were reflexively looking out to their herd now. They looked directly at the other animals in the arena, the people, sitting and watching, and then the horse looked at the trainer. Everyone was relaxed. Nobody was hyper alert or worried, except maybe me. I was feeling a little bit ill at ease. Briefly, the horse's eyes locked onto mine. I looked right back and exhaled a little tightly through a chest breath. I nodded my head towards them, not in agreement, but in a solidarity. Inside myself, I said quietly, "I know, buddy." The retrainer repeated this process now for another 5 minutes. First, the aid for the transition, then, after 2 to 3 steps, would ask again and instruct the horse to continue. Twice more, the horse needed the whip to back up the secondary aid that asked for the continuation of the walk. Then it appeared that for the horse, the penny dropped. Just go. Now, the horse started walking briskly on a circle around the trainer at the end of the lead line, watching the whip periodically, then glancing to their herd, then to the sand in front of them, walking a circle to the maximum extent that the rope would allow, bringing them far beyond the whip's extension. The trainer was standing lightly, with hardly any expressive energy in their body language, following correctly behind the shoulder of the horse's driveline. Now the horse was just walking, not stopping. They just kept going. "Lovely!" exclaimed the trainer, now praising the horse vocally at a distance. The uptick in the trainer's voice sounded very similar to their first instance of praise in this session, so much so that it echoed in the horse's short-term memory, and they reflexively dropped their shoulder so that their nose could move off the circle that they were pacing on and glanced strongly towards the trainer. Another bid for regard. It looked like the shoulder dropped, but I saw the horse was asking a hopeful question about praise. "No, no, continue." The whip was raised towards the hip. The horse's head went immediately back to the circle, continued their walk, and like a tendon slowly losing tensile tension, the whip slowly, smoothly was lowered, slow motion removal of the aid. Now the picture was this. The horse who didn't understand forward at all 35 minutes ago was now walking strong, brisk circles around the trainer. The trainer was doing almost nothing with her body, and their voice was now free to address the crowd observing, speaking on various subjects such as lightness, elegance, and the importance of correct and kind use of tools like whips. She spoke on the benefits of cherry, dry bamboo, or willow over a fiberglass whip, and when she mentioned that they were free so long as you had access to the plant, the crowd laughed softly and warmly with her. She mentioned how she enjoys long walks down by the river, and there she picks fresh willow, brings them home, cleans and dries them, and then they last her several weeks properly stored as the horse continued circles around her. The horse was now not glancing at her, except for the occasional ear flick or glance at the whip. The whip was laid in an off position by her side and was drawing circular figures in the sand as she rotated on spot like a carousel, the horse walking around her. I remember staring at the figures in the sand and zoning out for a few moments, wondering if anyone else felt like me, or if anyone else felt like this horse right now. Now came the final moment of the training. Softly and quickly and with well-practiced, almost complacent competency, the trainer stepped forwards, briefly interrupting the horse, who turned and made another reflexive bend towards her, a bid for regard, and she unclipped the lead rope. The horse, still in the bend towards her, glancing both eyes on her in lateral flexion, watching her take 2 steps back, her body quiet, her voice silent, her energy absolutely neutral. She lifted the stick off the sand about 2 feet, and from the lateral flexion position, the horse saw this motion towards their hip with their inside eye. And then, like clockwork, their nose went back on the circle, and the horse went directly back to pacing the same circle around them. This time, no rope. Horse naked. In zoos, when an animal paces their cage so much that they create a trail in the sand, even a trench, behaviorists and landscapers and gardeners are called in to create an enriching environment because this is understood as a stress response. Here, the trainer explained how important consistent and repeatable behaviors are natural outcomes of clear, correct education of the horse delivered with good intentions. Smiling now, the crowd suppressed their desire for applause but shifted forwards in their seat to watch the trainer effortlessly facilitate a forward-going horse at liberty. Again, that's a very raw passage of part of a chapter. This is the chapter where I introduce the genesis of my concern with whips in training. And that's just the first of a few stories that I then share. And again, it's a raw video and it might not make the final cut, but it's a true story. It's something I observed, and it's all my observation. My observation is based upon what I speculated to be the horse's experience. And that's all we can ever do, unless we're only reading mechanical behavior. But one of the core features of my work with emotional horsemanship is to step, I hope bravely, and I hope as accurately as possible, outside the scope of mechanical behavior and step inside the slightly messier and, in my opinion, more enriching world of how the horse feels about the training we expose them to. Well, if you're interested in the book, I have no waiting list and nowhere where you can sign up for more information except maybe my social media and my website. My website is emotionalhorsemanship.com, and my social media is on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find it at Emotional Horsemanship by Lockie Phillips. And stay tuned. I hope I will finish the manuscript in time. But yeah, I hope that story maybe resonated with some people who maybe have seen similar demonstrations where there was nothing really abusive happening, but maybe it left you feeling a little troubled anyway. Take care. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now. If you would like to support this podcast, a simple way to do that is by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon. It will help more people to find these conversations, and it would mean a lot to me. Horse First with Lockie Phillips is distributed by the Believe Audio and Video Network. And just a gentle reminder, the content of this show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and are not a substitute for professional, veterinary, or medical advice. I'm Lockie Phillips. Thank you for being here.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.